Okay, next speaker we have Ravi, who's going to talk about delivering business value, the deal breaker. So welcome Ravi. Could we give him a round of applause before he begins?
Alright, so this is probably something most of you have already heard, and through the day I think Bhavin and I don't know what Karthik spoke, I was not there, I missed out. People have already spoken, so in case you hear me ranting the similar thing, don't blame me, blame the organizers, they didn't read my script. I had prepared my stuff, so I don't have words now, so probably I'm trying to cook up, but anyways. So the talk is primarily in terms of agility, value and things like that. What does it mean and what are the things that goes wrong? Pretty much what we see and why that is. And also there is an aspect of, when you talk about agility as a whole, there's also a business element to it, and how is business not fitting in today, where they are, because unless they fit in, we don't. So that's where I talk about a little bit of forecasting and things like that as we go to the end. Right. I think there are about 6 deal breakers which I have put. I think there will be many more, or it could be fewer also if you want to summarize it in a slider or something. But feel free to ask questions or whatever. We'll see what I will try and answer the best possible. Okay. So first things first, agility. What is agility? Is agile and agility same?
No.
Right. So cut to the chase. How many of you were in the 2014 conference, Agile India conference? Alright, so Dave Thomas did a keynote on the last day. And after the conference, he wrote a blog, Time to Kill Agile.
Agile is dead. That's not good.
So, this was his blog, Time to Kill Agile. So, go and read his blog, very interesting post. And the summary of that is, agility is what he puts it in 4 bullet points like this. Right? So, I'll give you a couple of minutes if you want to read through this. Very, very interesting, because this kind of brings out or summarizes the state of affairs that we have today in the marketplace. Everybody is looking at agile as kind of a noun. Yes, we have arrived in life sort of a thing. People humdrumming so much about the other aspects, a lot of other aspects, but the nuances lies in this, and which is why he summarizes more about, let's forget that word agile, let's talk about agility because it's harder to misappropriate. Right, so there's a huge, big blog post, very interesting stuff. Alright, that's agility. The next aspect is, what is value? What does value mean? Because agile software development is all about value delivery, right? Am I right here?
Yes.
Okay, so what is value?
ROI.
Your customer pays.
What my customer pays for. Okay?
It's the ROI basically.
It's the ROI. Okay, so ROI will be much different from what the customer pays for.
How efficient is your end user?
How efficient is your end user? So you are from services, I know you. So we also deal with the same crap every time. But here is the thing. So from Google I got something like this. So what is customer value? The regard that something is held to deserve, the importance, worth or usefulness of something. The material or monetary worth of something. The worth of something compared to the price paid or asked for it. So it's kind of ambiguous in that way. It could mean anything to anybody. I mean, it depends on the context, where you are and who the person is, how he perceives it. Right? So, which is why I wanted to lay out these two things right at the outset, because I think fundamentally the rest of the talk will revolve around this. Because it will be ambiguous if you start asking questions who's not from this realm, probably you will not see that. It's better to ignore, ignore such person or whatever. I'm not saying that, disrespectfully or whatever, because we don't tie into that. So agile or whatever agility that we talk about is perhaps that you also resonate to that, and then only you can make progress. But if you are on the other side of the bridge and trying to talk about these things, it doesn't really make sense, because you can be shouting on other side and I can be talking about something else. Alright, the first deal breaker one. So given what I said about value, it's kind of hard to measure value, correct? There is no standard process yet. There is nothing called as a metric which will say here is a value for value. I really don't know that. Now most of us who have come through the story point, Bhavin spoke about this, the crap about story points and all that stuff, it is, if somebody is saying that they are doing story points and they are getting benefited, I will be very surprised. It's it's nonsense according to me. But it helps. Somebody said, JP actually said it brings people together. As long as we keep it at that, fair enough. But beyond that, it's a metric, it is used for some progression, it is used for some forecasting and all that. I'm very, very skeptical. So many things change in that. So when people say that, I am measuring value by story points delivered, I'm kind of lost. Because business doesn't understand story point, period. So if I am giving it a lower cost than what they are thinking, they might say yes. But then if the thing is not working as per their thing, then where do you account for that? All the feeling based aspects of it, which is ultimately it leads to better experience, right? The second one is what's in the backlog. I don't know if you are able to see in the back. This is basically the Kano model. How many of you have seen the Kano model? Yeah. So basically Kano model focuses on differentiating product features as opposed to focusing initially on customer needs. If you have to drive value, so Kano model actually goes up on the topmost. It's more about the wow factors, the satisfied. Beyond that, I mean, you've given me something out of the world sort of a thing. And there are certain things which are totally dissatisfied. Now the problem here is that when you try to create all these things, there are certain times when you start off anything new, it's not implemented, it's right at the outset. It could be a feature that is like path breaking, earth shattering, okay, brand new thing. But then it will soon saturate because that innovation kicks in right early. Because that becomes your expectation. Right? So when you start on an innovative front, what happens is the build-up is, the initial legwork that you have to put in for that is huge. But once people try to start replicating it, it becomes like, we know this stuff. So your USP for that actually diminishes. Now from there on, how do you actually create satisfied customer perpetually, all along when you keep doing it? But then so that's the reason that you don't do Kano kind of a thing as once in a year, once in a thing. It has to be again and again. It has to be repetitive. So try to apply that when you try to do your high level backlog formation itself. Try to see or get a sense for what is it that I can create a wow factor for my customer in this release. But when you are trying to do enterprise apps, it is more not about wow factors all the time. It is like if your system is down, the best thing that you can do is bring the system up. It may not be anything wow, but the point is at that time they don't want to be hurt anymore. So how do you put rationale to the combination of things that are going on? Web-centric apps, if you are doing it, you can discard it or you can take down the application, fair enough. But in an enterprise kind of a context, you cannot do that. You have very little leeway to do certain things. So you will have to accommodate sometimes issues which are there which will not give you any wow factor, but then you still have to go on with it. So this kind of puts it in perspective, and when you plot it on these things, and there are certain other techniques and things like that which is not in scope of today's discussion at least, but there you can actually make a sense of here's my backlog, which is a meaningful backlog across all this board. There are certain things I will cut across to the customer which will be really wow factor. There are certain things which are probably mundane but we still need it anyways. So many a times you have to do your technical architecture stuff. Business don't see value in it. Why should they see value in it? But the point is we still have to pursue it because in the long term it will be detrimental for them. So but then you have to take your short term loss for it and look at it from a long term perspective. Then there is deal breaker 3. It's more about dysfunctional agile teams. Yeah, we've seen backlogs, this is the formation and all that. So 5 dysfunctions of a team. Peter Lencioni, he actually wrote this book. Interesting thing, it's not just for agile teams or whatever, but in agile it kind of gets compounded. I've tried to put something what goes wrong. You have a namesake backlog to start with, you don't even know what it is. Most of the times I have worked with teams who come in, okay, there is something one-liner given in an Excel sheet, I don't even know what it is, I start working on it. And the problem comes is, so what do I do in planning then? There is fear of conflict. Especially in a setting that where we are used to and we are working, most of the times we are not habituated to say no. We are more accustomed to say yes. Right? And the fact that you don't know in clear terms what exactly that you have to do, and you are junior or whatever, you don't raise your voice to ask those. You kind of succumb to the fact that, let me accept whatever it is because I cannot confront with these people. Or I cannot, use my words against these people or whatever. So you accept that fact, then you move on, then you get into the standardized trap. So we talked about all these estimates. At least in Some of the teams that I have worked with, they have already created story point standards. So if it is somewhere around 3 days, it is a 5 story pointer. It's an Excel sheet, beautiful Excel sheet which will give you a forecast. This thing will go up like, arrows, this side, that side, all projections will come out. It's all created by management, not really the team. Is the team having any say in that? Dysfunctions are happening because of, in my view, most of the time it is management intrusion. Most of the time. Because what they want to see is, okay, it is nice to hear for me, nice to look for me, and I can go and talk to customer. Not about the ground realities. So if you have answered the question, is there a namesake backlog? Hey, this is customer, what can we do? We can't tell the customer to give a meaningful backlog. So let's work it out. No, we only have a plan now. Let's do planning. How effectively will you do a plan? So there is, if you are not conflicting, I normally say sprint planning should be like, they are all about positive confrontations. Confrontation is negative, but then we need to have positive because you are debating, you are challenging status quo. You want to do in a better way. Right, because you take the input of your retrospective from the past also, here are the screw-ups that we did, now how do we avoid those kind of things. Normally your retrospectives are there as a ceremony to be kept with because somebody in quality department asks you and you log it. Yeah, we have also done it. But then are you bringing it along in your next sprint planning? No, it is still there. So one of the teams I visited I think in Holland, they were probably doing about 8 or 10 iterations they had completed and their whole wall was stacked with all these beautiful post-its. None of the scrums had actually completed. And they had a whole, back door of, backside of the door filled with their retrospective points. When I asked them, why are you doing it continuously like this? We have no choice, but unless we give 125 story point, my product owner is not going to accept and we cannot move on. So the mandate from management or from the business side of it is to do minimum so many story points. Now you can bulldoze it and say that, for me going forward it is not 10 stories equal to 125 story points, it is going to be 1 story worth 125 story points. Right, so it's all about pressure tactics. So when people get into arm twisting, you really can't do anything. That's where dysfunction sets in. Right. So obviously you have your iteration chaos and then there is nothing to show and tell. So when you look at this, read this book and talk about this kind of a triangle and how he has put out all these 5 things. And you can somehow relate to these are the anti-patterns or whatever is there from the agile front and say that these are the things and how are we going to avoid. So this is one of the deal breakers. Any questions? This is something which I have been seeing at least in the large IT services shops. Industrialization. And I have been challenged to accept this word industrialization ever since it started, probably about a couple of years ago or 1.5 years ago in software. Because industrialization as a paradigm existed 400 or 350 years ago. What was a best practice then is not going to be a best practice now, for sure. At least when you look at industrialization then and try to apply it in software, because these two are two different beasts in its own ways. Software development is very, very dynamic. Agree or disagree? So how do I actually do, there is very little repeatability in software if you ask me. Other than your infrastructure, Evan was talking about few of the things, those kind of things, yes. But since you are engaged from an intellect perspective, you are always challenging the status quo and things like that, how can you make something repeatable? What is best practice in one certain project or a certain team context in a certain where they are hosting, etc., may not be a best practice elsewhere. You can't even carry it forward. So today there is this whole organization trip buying into the lean world of it. Toyota has done it, so we will also do it. That's like sheer nonsense to me. I really don't see some value. Where does it go? In the name of agile, in the name of lean, I want to bring repeatability, I want to see it, and they talk about we will have KEDVs, we will have code generators. That's how we go towards industrial. Has anybody seen code generators succeed? There are plethora of code generators today in the market. So if only code generators were the silver bullet, I'm sure half of Silicon Valley wouldn't have existed now. Right? So there is more and more work demand from people who will contextually engage with business, and Agile is talking about we will work with business. Here industrialization is talking about we don't want anybody or any of your people, you give me an input, goes an output. Boom. And I think in certain contexts it is valid where I know that there is a huge backlog of work where there are only bugs. There are lights on applications. New applications are coming up, they are being re-engineered or whatsoever. Till that new system comes out as a whole and it is tested, I need to keep my lights on and hence I want to do it. In that perspective, yes, you can apply some of these things. But the point is, will it give you value? Is there value in that? And if there is value, how much of value? Because already business has signed off on that. They are saying that, this is only going to be lights on till the new project comes. Whatever you have to do to make it alive, stay alive, yes, put it on a vent or whatever, let it go on. Now what Kano model will you apply? What wow factor will you apply there?
Staying alive.
So if that is all the thing is, for me it is like, all these hospitals they put you on the event just because they can recover as much money as you want. They suck up all the money. So pull him off of the event here. I mean, if he has to die, let him die in peace.
But that's a criminal offense.
No, but even pulling on a event is a criminal offense. Just don't tell you that. We are still positive that he is going to be alive after 2 days of ICU. All that he is saying is, there is a 100,000 rupees cost for every single day of ICU charge. He is going to suck you out of that. That's all. So yeah, he is seeing value. So if you put it in that perspective, yeah. And I see from an IT service perspective, yeah, it is definitely value because so many jobs are created. I have no problem with that if you see from that light. Scaling agile. Everybody is fascinated by scaling. You put scaling in front of agile, everybody will look up. No, see, everybody saw that. Everybody saw that. It's like, wow, it's scaling now. But for scaling, we need these things. Strategy, collaboration, autonomy, learning and evolve. It's only there as English. We have strategy. It says that I am going to give you so much of work. Here is a tool that you need to use. This is how we operate. Here is a standardized story point estimation. If you go beyond 50 story point, then you mark it as a question mark, then everybody will start doing the same thing. So that is strategy for you. Collaboration, yeah, we have to collaborate means what? On what line? Do you allow me to say there is conflicts? Let there be conflict on an idea that I am working on because there can be two equally good perspectives. And software is all about that. I am kind of challenged to see if there is only one solution or two solutions. Right? And of course, many of the time when we see code working, it is out of Google. In fact, it was an interesting thing. So somebody actually did that. How do we make our people more productive? Give them Google access. You take off Google and then they become half unproductive. At least 50% productivity goes down. So unless we start talking about autonomy in a true sense, we talk about scaling. One of the things about scaling is we have distributed teams, right? And given that we work in an IT service, at least I work a lot in the IT services, it comes along with that. We are offshoring center, we are an outsourced partner, we also have to do distributed agile and all that crap. But the point is, where do we get any of these things? This is something which is thrusted down by our customers. Right? Collaboration, they say you only have to talk to me in one language, then diversity comes in. Even within India, when I see people, it's like it's very, very challenging to have a collaborative team in India. I can probably have a collaborative team in the US where there is only one national language. In some of the teams I go and work with, there is like Hindi, Tamil, Telugu, and they are all very, very good communicating in their own languages. But when you do a daily stand-up and they come into a huddle, they just zone off. There is nothing, they cannot speak. It's not that they don't know the content. Right? There is peer psychosis there because there is a manager standing there. So I don't. And the second part is, I'm not as fluent as as I need to be to communicate, and there is a customer also sitting on that side of it. What do I do? In fact, very early on, I think back in 2009 or something, when I was working with one of the team, they introduced a best practice because they saw this daily stand-ups were not working. They were challenged. So they introduced a daily stand-up for a daily stand-up. So one was a preparation daily stand-up. The second one was a final daily stand-up where the customer got in. Right? It was needed at the initial phase because you get acclimatized to that, bring the people on board, tell them, educate them and nurture them. The quality team actually went out and recorded that as a best practice, and now they want to scale that. How mind-numbing is that? I mean, how many times do you want to do that? You can leave it to a limited time. After that, what? Because it happened such a way, it became mechanized. The whole thing about, I was talking about factory model, right? In this, so these kind of concepts will trickle in. Now, what these people did was, every time they were repeating these things, fine. Customer had, after one time, felt that there was something wrong. He started interjecting and said, now he asked a tangential question. You are not prepared for it. Guess what happened in that room? Obviously, customer is on the other side. We have got that phone there. People are standing around or whatever talking, which in itself is mind-numbing first of all. But then anyways, given whatever it is, you're standing there and there is complete silence. But on this side, I am actually observing them. Each one of them are crossing their eyesight with everybody else. What to do? What should we answer? Because this was not orchestrated. So what happened to your best practice? It was a very, very simple question though. Now he is not empowered to answer that question because they were not prepared. Manager was supposed to answer, or the designate scrum master. Customer shot him down saying that you keep quiet, let me ask the people. In fact, when we got our CSAT scores, it was pretty high. But the remark that they made was only this. If only the team had actually aligned to the agile values, we would have seen better results. He was very polite and diplomatic about that. The truth of the matter is, these were the things. We did not get a repeat order. We pat our back saying that as customer sats are high, but then everybody takes it. Okay. So where is the business side of things in this? Sorry. My last deal breaker 6. Where's the business side? Lot of times I see business is not even involved in an agile process. At best they give lip service to it. Lot of companies, lot of enterprises are still challenged to move their business into a development. There is this product owner. He is a conduit for all the failures, I would believe. In fact, if you ask me the two roles that I would kill, product owner and scrum master. See, the problem with agile today is, in traditional at least you had one manager. Today in most agile teams you have two managers. One customer manager as a product owner, the other one is a scrum master manager who is acting that.
Actually, Karthik is telling three.
Oh, you said three.
There is plus a manager.
The real manager. I mean, you are beating an army of all these villains only. I mean,
QA manager, dev manager, scrum master, product owner.
no, that can be tactfully solved. In our company, actually, some of them, I think, in our company, somewhere I heard, the QA and the scrum master got in line because both of them will be hit by senior management if this course goes down.
How many developers do you have?
How many developers?
One, yeah. One or two.
So, the point is, agile teams today are taking instructions by standing up rather than sitting down. In traditional world, at least they were relaxed sitting down and taking instructions. Today they are standing up and in the name of daily stand-up they take instructions. It is actually painful. Some of these daily stand-ups actually go for 35-40 minutes and all that. That's a conservative. No, I didn't want to look like a fool by saying 1 hour or whatever, but 30-40 at least maybe in parity with most. Alright. Now, business side of things, where is business budgets and forecasts? Are businesses also doing in an iterative cycle? On the whole planning aspect? Not many businesses. In fact, when you talk about reforecast, reprioritize your backlog, that itself is some kind of a jittery tone in business. Why? I've already given you this because plans are done once, budgets are done once. Based on the budget, they say how many of this, and there are projections for it. Whether you want to deliver it or not, you have a boatload of your backlog items created. Now it's just a matter of saying that put it in an Excel, I call it as a backlog as opposed to anything else. In the old world it was called as requirements water, now you don't want to call it, right? Because Agile will tell something bad about it.
It's no requirements.
Forecasts are not estimates though. There's a difference between forecast and estimate. Anybody?
Yeah.
What's the difference?
That's a superficial
What is
We may deliver this.
That's what?
Forecast.
Forecast
Forecast is not guaranteed.
May or may not.
not guaranteed.
Other forecast may or may not rain.
May not,
Yeah.
okay, but more.
It may rain.
It may rain.
That's what forecast.
It's more or
It will rain.
It's more.
So, here's the thing, right? In estimate, you pack in lot of variables. Forecast is based on data. It's predictability. Whether forecast or anything is on predictability. They have data to prove that point, they don't add variables into it. Lot of times when you do estimates, you add variables into it. Something is not there, you make assumptions to it and this and that you add. I mean, otherwise they come close to each other. They are loosely used words, forecast and estimate.
Basically, estimate is the current status. Forecast is for the future.
So current state, based on that you factor in all these variables etc. so that you get a good feel about it, yeah, I can do this. But the point about it is when you talk about business and business agility, you also have to be nimble enough to do your business forecast and keep repeating that cycle. Because value delivered has to be seen in a certain context. And then you have to allocate money for it also. If you are getting values, continue with that. Otherwise, don't. Seed out another kind of a project which will give you value and try to move on. But in a traditional cycle, what happens is I'm packed with that because there is a single budget cycle that happens. If I do one budget cycle, whole planning is done for the entire year, there's no point IT delivering it incrementally and you are saying only this because there are certain projects which are bleeding. Certain projects, it's meaningless now because of the competition. You have taken a decision that I'll replace with a COT system. Now what would you do with? Because which is why at the end of the year you are left with so much of budgets. If you go back, you go into December cycle, they'll say, so much money is left now, what do we do? Let's go out for a team outing, that's when it starts. Why? Because I have a budget. Till then as a team outing was not necessary. The whole point is before you start the project, you want to motivate the team for, that's the reason why you want team outing. Not because you are left with some budget, now what do I do? Because next time I don't get so much budget. I have to expend all the budget, then only I can go and cut at least for so much. This is what happens, and then that is why in December cycles you will see a lot of outings.
Lot of team building.
Team building activity, when projects are already closed. They say that projects are closed, it's a linear time, I don't have to do anything. Come January, half these teams are not there together. What have you built then? Sorry?
Calories.
Actually, they do a whole lot of, they play games and they go to team building things, so they burn a little bit of it, right? And then there is ignoring economics is not pragmatic, right? So when you talk, I think somebody was talking about, I didn't get the actual thing, Bhavin was trying to answer during Ebin's talk, what is that value in your user story context or whatever. So when you look at economics of scale or whatever it is, right? So what would happen is, one way of looking at economics of scale, in a sense that there is always going to be a transactional cost and there is going to be a holding cost. Correct? Transactional cost is more about saying that whether, so there is a production outage, bug. If you have to move something into production, it takes whole lot of packaging, everybody has to get involved, blah blah blah, it costs you X dollars. You have no other choice but to do it because production is down. There's a transactional cost associated. Now there are certain times where you want to pool certain things or as a strategy and then say as part of a release I'm going to give this, because holistically you can give this as value, because in traditional systems you will look at it as a costing factor. What does it take for me to move from development into production? Means that I also have to educate so many of my users. I have to work with a third party agency to package all these stuff. I have to write instructions for all these things. I have to generate user manuals. All those things are there when you are talking about enterprise scale. So that is where they differ these releases. So is it meaningful content that goes, and is there an economy that you can satisfy with this? Hence I would do. But the longer you wait, there is also going to be a holding cost associated because you will lose an opportunity. So you will always have to balance between what is your opportunity lost versus your transactional cost. So which means that you have to do, your forecasting also has to be aligned to those things. Without that, you will never be able to get it. Because one time you have said this is what it costs, I don't have budget to release it now, means what? You are losing an opportunity. Will you be sitting on that? At least in today's businesses, they don't wait on that. So in that sense, this is a good book on future ready, how to master business forecasting. There are two perspectives to it. There is strategic planning and there is operational forecasting. And when you look at it, there is purpose and process. Lot of your operational forecasting, there are two things, right? So your operational forecasting is all about predictability, right? So here are these things. So I know definitively these are the things. I could do this. These are the things I have to do. You can say step 1, 2, 3. Now, on the aspect of strategic planning, it's about choices. It's about outcomes. It's about saying market fitment. Am I going for a new market and how do I gel? So there has to be some parity between these two. So unless this is turned out in a cycle and that is aligned to your delivery cycles, it doesn't make sense. So this, when you tie it down to DevOps and those kind of movement, CD and all that, it makes a meaningful contribution to overall business agility. Otherwise, it still doesn't. Talking just business agility and development agility in its own things without bringing in these elements to it will really not help. Okay. So finally, it's agility in dev alone will not drive business value. Right, so that was my talk. Any questions? So did it make sense at all?
Yeah, makes sense.
How many of you felt that made sense? Thank you.
Thanks, Ravi.